Can take your gut health to the next level. My friend, you are about to find out. Welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. This show now watched in more than 150 countries around the world, making it one of the most downloaded nutrition podcasts anywhere on the entire planet. But today we're talking about spices, and the difference between your gut health and your gut hurt may be in your kitchen, but I'm not talking about what's in your fridge. It's about all of those little things that are in those little jars that are on the spice rack in your kitchen. So we are talking spices and gut health today with the two-time New York Times bestselling author, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. He is a gastroenterologist, a great friend of the show, a personal friend to me, and one of the most intelligent people on the planet when it comes to gut health. And he has covered spices extensively in both Fiber Fueled and the Fiber Fueled Cookbook. So he is here today to bestow all of that knowledge with us. And if there's a question that you have for Dr. B, go ahead, drop that in the comments or in the chat. You can send it to me as well on Twitter or Instagram. I am at Chuck Carroll, WLC. Let's go ahead and stuff that doctor's mailbag. We're going to talk about spices and digestion and reducing bloating and cutting down on gas, all kinds of things. And we're also going to open it up to talk about whatever else is on your mind. So go ahead, drop your question in the comment or in the chat. We're going to get to as many as we possibly can. And let's go ahead and welcome on that two-time New York Times bestselling author, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. Man, good to see you. It's been a while.
It's great to see you, Chuck. It feels like it has been a while, although we did do back-to-back episodes in late May. So it's been about a month. But a quick shout out before we move forward with the episode. I just want to say hello to High Carb Beth and also Elizabeth Parrish, who are saying this is their first time watching live. Welcome to the broadcast. Thank you for being in the comments section with us.
Oh, that's awesome. I love first timers. I love it so much when people are able to find the show live and that sense of community, it builds with every single episode. So I'm stoked. Welcome, guys. I'm so glad that you're here. And this is a really important topic and one that honestly, Will, I'm surprised that we haven't gotten to yet. Because you do talk about spices a lot, and how could you not in a cookbook? For goodness sakes. But people think about spices, they think about flavor, but they don't really think too much about how it might be affecting their health. In this case, specifically their gut health. Marshall has made the connection, but he's wondering which are the healthiest spices for the gut.
Okay. Before I answer this question, I want to tell you my second favorite thing about spices. My second favorite thing about spices is that people who are carnivore and they claim that they eat an exclusively meat diet, they still use spices, which come from plants. That is my second favorite thing about spices. Like, you're busted. You're claiming you only eat meat, but you can't quit us, can you? You need those spices because they add flavor. That meat is boring without us. All right. So, but my favorite thing about spices is they're great for gut health. They're great. And part of what makes them great, even when you're just reaching into the spice cabinet, is the polyphenol content. Polyphenol is what gives the spices their different colors. And many of these spices, they also have unique phytochemicals that you're actually tasting. Like, what you taste, that sort of provocative thing, is actually something that is going to ultimately come into contact with your gut microbes and have beneficial effects. Chuck, I have never come across a study that says that the consumption of spices is unhealthy for the gut microbiome. Every single one that I've come across, it says that they're good for us. Spices are a great way to add diversity into your diet. I encourage people to be liberal with your use of spices. It's good for the tongue. It's also great for the gut microbes. Now, the question was, what are my favorite spices? Okay. It's so hard for me to say, but I'm going to start with turmeric. Turmeric, that like really golden spice. It actually is what gives mustard that yellow color, believe it or not. Turmeric is in every bottle of mustard that you purchase at the store. And it has profound anti-inflammatory properties. They've actually shown that this activates the exact same pathway that ibuprofen and other drugs like that activate, but without the side effects, without the harm, without the negative effects that you get from those drugs. And so, speaking, for myself, in my own family, my father was very tall. He was 6'7", And I actually recommended to him that he add turmeric to his routine because he was having a lot of arthritis issues. And believe it or not, by quite simply adding turmeric to his daily routine, he substantially improved his arthritis, and he didn't have to take as much naproxen and ibuprofen as he had been taking previously. One of the tricks with turmeric, by the way, is to pair it with black pepper. Black pepper increases the absorption of turmeric substantially. So anytime you're using turmeric, if you're looking for those health benefits, make sure, even if it's just a little sprinkle, get some black pepper in there. And the last thing, Chuck, is that I think that like a cup of coffee can be a vehicle to deliver prebiotics to your gut first thing in the morning. And you could do that by adding fiber supplements, but you can also do that by adding spices. My personal favorite spice combination in a cup of coffee is turmeric, ginger, and cinnamon. You put those three, the trinity, into the bottom of your cup, pour some coffee over the top, stir it. Don't go too hard at the spices in the beginning. Go nice and light until you get used to it, but it's amazing.
So when you go to Starbucks, I mean, do you try to place that custom order, or are you just taking your own proprietary blend of spices with you to mix in?
So the problem with Starbucks, I love Starbucks. Okay, I'm there almost every single day. But the problem with Starbucks is that if you were to say, "Hey, could you add the turmeric for me?" They would give some sort of turmeric that is mixed with sugar, right? Like when you order matcha green tea, it's actually impossible to get matcha green tea without added sugar at Starbucks, believe it or not, because they've already blended the two together. So, look, it's up to you how you want to do this. It could be like a dollop bag, kind of similar to, what you carry your deodorant and your, toothbrush in when you're traveling. Or could be some sort of uh, like waste bag or something like that. I don't know. But the point is that you could bring your spices with you to Starbucks if that's what you're looking to do.
That might be the safe play. That might be the safe play. Keep it clean. You know, before the show today, when we got this question, I'm doing a little bit of research and I was like, all right, well, I wonder what are the most common spices that people have in their kitchen here in the US. Here's the list. You tell me if any of these are not good for gut health, because based off of what it was you just said, there's no spice that it has a detrimental effect, basically. So,
Okay.
black pepper, you've already given the thumbs up to. Cumin,
Oh, major thumbs up. Fantastic spice.
red pepper flakes.
Believe it or not, yes. Red pepper flakes, including red pepper in general, contains capsaicin. Capsaicin has been shown to be good for the gut, anti-inflammatory.
All right. Bay leaves, more of a herb than a spice, maybe? I don't know.
Haven't seen any clear data, but I'm giving it a thumbs up because the assumption is that that's going to have polyphenols that are good for your gut microbiome. So I'm expecting thumbs up on that.
Garlic powder.
Oh, major thumbs up. Garlic powders. Look, I would rather you get fresh garlic, but I'm still giving it a thumbs up to garlic. It has allicin, and allicin has the benefits that you get from garlic come from this phytochemical called allicin.
Paprika.
Paprika, that's a definite thumbs up also. I mean, anytime you see a vibrant color like that, vibrant red, you know that there's polyphenols in play that are good for your gut microbes.
And we'll round it out with oregano.
Oh, definite thumbs up with oregano. Oregano has anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. Now, here's the thing: oregano oil, which is basically taking oregano and then concentrating it. I'm a little bit more cautious about that because I feel like when you're concentrating it in an unnatural form, you can actually cause harm to the microbiome. But when it's consumed as a spice, totally different story. Completely thumbs up on that.
All right. Let's take a question here from Anton. You were just talking about turmeric. Anton, hi, Chuck and Dr. Will. Must I eat turmeric every day?
You don't have to. You don't have to. It's not a must. There's no such thing as a must in terms of your diet. Let me say this: making rules that cause stress or duress, that's not what I'm about when it comes to nutrition. I'm more like, yo, this food is fun. It is delicious. And by the way, when you're eating plants, it's good for you. So let's just look for opportunities to get as many of these as possible. But I will say, if you believe in healthy habits, meaning that that little thing that you do, but you do it consistently, will ultimately pay dividends, then looking at something like turmeric, cinnamon, and ginger in your coffee on a daily basis, if you love it, don't do it if you don't love it. If you love it, you have just created a healthy habit, and that's how you can like create the vehicle for turmeric on a routine basis.
Let's see here. Panna, also a first timer joining us today. So, hello. Thanks for being here. Betsy, not a first timer, but appreciates all the excellent info as always. And Michelle, the plant based dog mom, just wants to say hi to us. So, hello, one and all. Let's get specific about IBS here and spices. Interesting question. I'm not sure that there's a connection necessarily between the two here. Deidre is wondering if any spices are particularly beneficial in terms of finding some relief if you have IBS.
Well, real quick, Chuck, there's a comment from Chris Wheeler in the chat box. And Chris has been eating my Trinity overnight oats from the Fiber Fields cookbook routinely. And the Trinity overnight oats includes cinnamon and turmeric and ginger. So I actually applied that spice pattern into that specific recipe.
That's your own breakfast blend right there, man. That's what that is. That is a breakfast blend. The Bulsiewicz breakfast blend.
Definitely. What are some of the things that are beneficial for IBS? So, well, let's put it this way. First of all, peppermint. I don't know if you consider that to be a spice. Obviously, though, like peppermint is something that could be consumed routinely, and it could be done as a form of tea, as an example. And peppermint actually has powerful research to back it up in terms of irritable bowel syndrome. Multiple studies that have all said the same thing. People have improvement of their symptoms when they consume turmeric. I'm sorry, consume peppermint. The other one that immediately comes to mind is if you go to an Indian restaurant and it's like authentically Indian, and you go to checkout, usually where the host or hostess works, you'll find a bowl filled with fennel seeds. It's actually a tradition, Indian culture, to chew on fennel seeds after a meal. And it turns out that the oils that are in the fennel seeds, and I'm talking about the same fennel seeds that you may have in your spice cabinet. The oils that are in the fennel seeds actually are good for irritable bowel syndrome, and they help digestion. So, and that's part of the reason why that's a part of Indian culture is that they've discovered, they discovered this little hack, and they just kind of started doing it. And we could do it too if we want to. You could also do it as fennel tea if you prefer, instead of chewing on the seeds.
What if you mix that fennel in with something that we know probably isn't the healthiest thing for you, like sausage, right? So I know that a lot of people are keen on putting fennel in sausage. As somebody who's watching this right now who just wants to, poke the bear a little bit, so to speak, is going to say, yeah, well, I can get that same benefit with that piece of sausage.
Oh,
what do you say there?
How many episodes of the exam room have we done? And this is the first time we're talking about sausage on the exam room.
I know, right? I know. I know.
We were overdue. Okay. Look, at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a perfect diet. That's being real. I don't think people should have anxiety about their food, but I do think that we should make smart choices. And when you put a little sprinkling of fennel seeds into this sausage vehicle, that is effectively putting something that is beneficial into a larger bowl of poison. And you wouldn't drink the larger bowl of poison just to have this little sprinkle of something that's beneficial or good for you. That wouldn't make sense. So let's stick to the fennel seeds. Let's look for alternative ways to get fennel seeds. But, truth be told, and this is just keeping it real, summertime, there are times when I like to have a Beyond Meat brat. And they're good. They taste great. Do I do it every week? Heck no. I probably do this 2 or 3 times a summer. And that's okay. I think that's okay. I don't think that you should feel guilty or bad about that. Having some space to consume foods that you enjoy that you're not necessarily eating for health. But let's make it that most of what we're eating because we know it tastes good and we're not compromising in terms of our health.
Right on. So I guess my question to you then would be, how does eating something that would be what I think the majority of people would say is a middle ground food in that Beyond Brat compared to something that you know is completely unhealthy in an actual brat in terms of gut health? What is the difference between the two there?
There's a couple of differences actually between the Beyond Meat broad and the real sausage. So the sausage is a preserved meat. You know, it's a preserved meat, and so the problem with the preserved meats is that the World Health Organization has identified them as a probable carcinogen. So that's the first thing, and the concern specifically relates to colorectal cancer. And look, we have a huge colorectal cancer problem in the United States. You and I have spent time on this show talking about colorectal cancer and the burden of disease that we have in the US. 150,000 people per year are being diagnosed with colorectal cancer. That's insane. And it doesn't have to be that way. And a big part of the problem is when we're eating foods that enhance or increase our risk. So that's the first thing that I would say is that you have one food that is a probable carcinogen according to reputable people at the World Health Organization, basically like a panel of scientists who are looking at the full body of evidence, versus there's no evidence that the Beyond Meat is a probable carcinogen. That's the first thing. The second thing is Professor Christopher Gardner, who is someone at Stanford University, very well-respected nutritionist, someone who I actually know, and we serve on the scientific advisory board of Zoe together. He actually published a paper comparing Beyond Meat products to organic animal products. That way, the argument can't be oh, well, you're feeding them junk meat, right? He gave them the highest quality, most expensive meat, the type of meat that most people can't afford, organic, and compared it to Beyond Meat products. And what he saw was that the organic meat drove up TMAO levels. Now, TMAO actually connects back to the microbiome, but this is a blood marker for those that haven't heard of this. It's a blood marker identified by the Cleveland Clinic, the top cardiology program in the country, that they have isolated and they have connected as an independent risk factor, similar to smoking, an independent risk factor for heart disease, having a heart attack, for stroke, for diabetes, for chronic kidney disease. There's no evidence that TMAO is good for us. There's a lot of evidence that it's bad for us. And you get it from eating meat, specifically red meat. So these are two of the benefits of the Beyond Meat brat compared to the traditional.
And that said, for those who really like to take make things as healthy as possible, still, you can do it the whole food plant-based way. There are carrot dogs out there if you really wanted to go to that kind of extreme, which, by the way, have you ever had a carrot dog that's made with the aminos and liquid smoke? Like they are delicious. They are absolutely delicious.
Well, this is the thing is you have a lot of options. So, I sit here, I'm not advocating for meat replacements. I'm not advocating for this in the sense that I'm not saying that we should make this the backbone of our diet. I'm just saying like there has to be some wiggle room in our diet where we eat things that aren't necessarily the healthiest diet on the healthiest food in the entire planet. That's just being human. But there are replacements that exist that we categorically agree don't come with those compromises. And so like a carrot dog would be an example of one. Another one would be a portobello burger. You could do portobello steaks. I actually have that recipe in the Fiber Fields cookbook. Black bean burgers, veggie burgers in general. There's a lot of great choices that are available. It's just sort of a question of like, what sort of experience are you looking for on your grilling day?
There you go. I like it. Let's circle back to turmeric. A lot of people still questioning this in the old chat here, wondering what the best form is. Can you get the same benefit from the powder, the ground turmeric that most of us have, as you could from fresh turmeric?
Yeah. The evidence would suggest that you can get those benefits from the powdered turmeric. And in fact, the vast majority of studies have not included the fresh turmeric. The vast majority of studies have actually been with the use of supplementation of turmeric. But like supplementation is frankly no different than, is it a capsule that contains the turmeric spice, or are you using the turmeric spice in your food? Ultimately, it's getting to the same place and doing the same thing.
There you go. Yeah, and that was the next question from a gentleman in the chat who was wondering if the supplements were just as good as the spice. It sounds like they can almost be one and the same.
Yeah, um, if you prefer to supplement with turmeric instead, for the person who said, I don't really like the flavor of it, I don't want to consume it on a daily basis. If you choose to take the turmeric supplement, I think that's perfectly fine. That's your choice. But there are ways that I think are delicious to include turmeric in your life.
All right, let's take an interesting question here from Barb, who is courageous enough to admit that she's suffering from a little bit of gas and bloating and wondering whether there are any spices she can incorporate in her diet to help out there.
The fennel, actually. So the fennel is a great choice when it comes to gas and bloating. Going back to that one from before, and peppermint, the peppermint approach is not specific to gas, but it helps in terms of irritable bowel syndrome, and irritable bowel syndrome often comes with a package that includes gas. So I would just go back to those two. That's where the body of evidence really is the most strong.
We were talking about Starbucks, talking about coffee, but what about tea? Let's switch gears away from spices just momentarily. Talk tea. Mary is wondering whether drinking tea can improve digestion.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I am of the belief that a warm beverage of any variety consumed after a meal does have a soothing effect. I am convinced that this is part of the reason why bone broth is so popular. I do not question that when people consume bone broth, they feel a sense of at ease in terms of their gut. I think that this is just a common thing among warm beverages that we consume. And like literally, I'm convinced you could warm up a glass of water and you still feel like a sense of ease with your gut when you consume this after a meal. So I do believe that tea can be something that helps in terms of digestion. In terms of tea and the microbiome, the evidence is clear. Tea is beneficial for the gut microbiome. And part of what's special about tea are the polyphenols, which we've been talking about during the show. When we're talking about spices, that really is what we're focusing on. The polyphenols are beneficial for the gut bugs. And the tea that seems to have the most in the form of these polyphenols is matcha green tea. Matcha green tea, you actually, because of the way that it's produced, it's a powder, and you stir the powder and you don't typically steep it. You don't have a bag that you pull out. You typically just stir the powder into water and you consume the whole thing. Well, that powder is actually the tea leaves. You're actually consuming the tea leaf. And this is part of what enhances the access to this particular phytochemical called the EGCG that has these benefits for our health, including for our gut health. So I'm a big fan of tea.
Have you figured out a way to get the water to absorb all of the matcha? I always wind up with kind of this matcha mud at the bottom of my mug every time that I try to mix it in there together. I know that you have some at your house. We enjoyed a cup when we were building out your studio. I don't know. Is there a trick to that I'm missing?
Well, okay, I don't prepare the traditional matcha in my home on a daily basis. When I do my matcha, let me just be upfront and frank. I typically pour the matcha into a mug, and then I add hot water and I stir. That's it. All
That's
right.
it. Yeah, man.
And it does settle out. So this is where keeping the spoon and giving it a stir before you take a sip is just kind of the hack they use. But Chuck, if you were to look at the traditional preparation of matcha, by the way, if anyone's ever been to Asheville, North Carolina, or if you're going to Asheville, fantastic town for being plant-based. My wife and I, this is where we like to vacation because we live in Charleston. We don't have great access to plant-based food here. When we go to Asheville, we feel like we're in heaven. And there's a place called Dobra Tea, and they serve tea in the authentic way. And they have this like 400-page book it's all about tea. It's hilarious. So traditional matcha tea is served in a Japanese, I forget the proper word for it. Someone in the chat box may have it, but it's basically like a ceramic. Okay. And you put the tea at the bottom, add a little bit of water. It's more like just a couple of ounces. It's not what you would do in a big mug. It's more like probably 3 ounces. And they have this special brush, and they will vigorously apply the brush and whip up the matcha until it becomes foamy. And then you drink it almost like an espresso.
Ooh.
and it's fantastic.
Ooh, that does sound quite tasty. We have let's see, Sherry J right now is saying matcha with a dash of lemon in there. That seems like that would be a heck of a combination as well.
Oh,
I might have to try that.
it's a great combination. I actually completely agree. I appreciate you, Sherry, for bringing that up because, and you also enhance the polyphenol content when you do it. So it's a fascinating thing.
Let's see. Erica Evans, is this live? Yes, sure is. Okay,
Oh,
question. Question from Michael. It says that he's been eating a whole food plant-based diet, but still not able to eat unlimited amounts of beans every day. How can he go ahead and try to incorporate more beans into his diet? Says sometimes he eats white rice. Says sometimes he eats white rice instead of brown, and that seems to help. So if somebody's struggling, Dr. B, to get more beans into their diet, where would you suggest they start?
Chuck, beans, they're good for the heart. But the more you eat, the more you pass gas. Right? So we want more beans. Beans are the longevity food. If you bring Dan Buettner from the Blue Zones on here, he's going to talk for an hour about beans, and it's hard to get him to stop talking about beans. It's a love affair. All right, because they're so good for us, and they reduce our risk of heart disease and cancer, among many other things. We want those beans. There are some tricks that you can apply. Naturally, my start low and go slow approach is a big part of the strategy that you use. What that means is getting your body adjusted to consuming beans. So don't go super hard at one meal with a ton of beans and then not eat beans for 2 weeks and talk about how that one meal made you feel bad. But instead, consuming beans with regularity in very small quantities is one of the ways that you can build up your tolerance. Another way is through soaking. When you soak your beans, all right. So if you have dried beans, put them in a bath of water overnight. All right. Wake up the next day, pour out the water, rinse them, and then pour out the water again. Okay, before you cook them. Or if it's canned beans, quite simply rinse them like crazy. The reason that this works is that you are actually drawing off one of the things that is responsible for a lot of the gas production. It's what we call water soluble. And so water soluble means that it will get into the water. So when you add water to it, you are pulling this out, and then you're going to pour it out into the sink. And so you are eliminating this thing that can be responsible for some of the gas production. You can also cook your beans with kombu. That's one of the tricks that people do. And if you don't, this is a recent thing for me, Chuck. I have become a big Instant Pot fan. Do you
Oh
have an Instant Pot?
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
big fan. Big, big,
Dude.
big fan. Absolutely.
All right. I never used one until very recently. Now I get it. Now I understand why people are freaking out about this. You take, like, if you're doing whole grains, this is such a way to make whole grains so accessible, because you quite simply take, like, you scoop a cup of whole grains, drop it in there, add like a cup and a half of water, little sprinkle of salt if you want it, press the button and come back in 20 minutes and you got the most fluffy, delicious whole grains ever. Right?
Yeah, man.
The same is true for legumes. When you cook with the Instant Pot with legumes, it's not just reducing the lectin content. It also is reducing the histamine content, which can be responsible for some bloating. And so there are some benefits to doing it like this.
Yeah, I really want to do that. I want to cook garbanzo beans in the Instant Pot and do ultra fresh hummus and see how that tastes. My guess is it will be the most extraordinary thing ever to hit this palate, and I'm excited about what may happen this weekend. I'm
What if you
pumped.
sprouted those garbanzos, baby? What if you sprouted those? Now that is,
I mean, that's next level. I mean,
yes.
that might just be too much. I don't know that I could handle that personally. That just might be too much for this guy.
Yeah.
Talking about whole grains here. Great transition to a question from Danushka, wondering whether they can cause bloating. She specifically is wondering about quinoa. Says every time she eats quinoa salad, her stomach starts to hurt and she starts to feel gassy, like she needs to use the restroom. And sometimes, not to get too TMI here, but she may see a little bit of undigested quinoa on the way out, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
She loves quinoa, though. What can she do?
Well, so there's a couple of things. First of all, whole grains and legumes, the story is actually very similar. There's a reason why these foods, number one, cause a lot of gas and bloating. Number two, many people will claim that they're bad for digestion. That's actually not true. You're just feeling it. And that's because they're high in fiber and resistant starches and polyphenols. That is 3 types of prebiotics. And that is also a lot of work for your microbiome. That's why you're struggling. But at the same time, that also makes them the ultimate gut health foods. I'm not kidding when I say that. Like, if I only get to choose 1 or 2, here's where I'm going. Those are my 1 or 2. Now, how can we approach this with whole grains? So, a couple of things. First, the low and slow method is in play once again. You got to make sure, because many of us have a tendency to do this. We get excited. Oh, I love quinoa. So then you serve up this massive bowl. But the quantity is part of the story. The larger the quantity of quinoa that you have in a serving, the more you are asking your gut microbes to step up and do work. So reducing the quantity of the quinoa and perhaps consuming it in smaller quantities on a more regular basis is one of the strategies. Another strategy is by cooking with the instant pot, the pressure cooker. So again, you get delicious food, so fluffy, so great, and simultaneously it becomes more digestible because you're cooking it that way. And the last thing would be sprouting it. So you can actually sprout your quinoa, and this is one of the ways to make it more accessible. So soaking it.
There you go. So you're like the sprout king. I could see like the follow up to fiber fueled being like sprout fueled or something like that. I don't know. Um,
um, I am the sprout prince. I'm the sprout prince.
there
The
it is.
sprout king is Doug Evans. Doug Evans is the sprout king. I am the sprout prince.
The sprout
I'm in the
prince.
court. I'm in the court.
Okay. There he's okay. You talk a lot about variety in your diet and the number of different plant foods a person should eat every week. Have a question from Norma, wondering whether when she's counting the number of different plant foods she's eating every week, would that include the foods that she's putting into her juicer?
Oh, wow. It's a good question, obviously, hence my response. And here's the thing that I would say. If you're asking me, do you include these when you put them into a smoothie? That's a clear, wholehearted yes, because you're not tossing the fiber. I mean, I have to say, like, if you're putting them into your juicer, I'm a bit apprehensive to include it on the list. That being said, at the end of the day, I just want you to get as many varieties of plants in whatever way you can. My preference would be that you do it in a smoothie instead of the juicer. That way you're not giving up the fiber. That would be my preference. But if the choice is juicer versus not doing them at all, I'll still take the juicer when it comes to these types of foods. And so if that's the case and you really want to include it, I'm not mad at you. At the end of the day, it's just about fun. That's the other thing to keep in mind. Like, it's not about the rules. If the rules are causing you stress, then you're not doing it the way that I want you to. I just want you to have fun and eat more varieties of plants, period. End of story.
That's it, man. Have fun with it. And this is a fun diet, man. It's all about creativity and finding innovative ways to get proper nutrition in the kitchen that's delicious and exploring and expanding the palate. And it is, dude. It is absolutely fun. If somebody asked me what's the best way to sum up a plant-based diet, fun might be the one word that I use.
It should be. For many people who don't cook this way, if they're not used to cooking this way, that to them is like, come on, you're eating cardboard. It's like, no, actually, I'm not. Check out these delicious recipes, right? But I kind of feel like it's like we should all channel our inner Emerald Lagasse and just like be in the kitchen, like bam, boom, bam with the spices. You know what I mean? That's part of the fun.
No doubt about it. And that's why like I find it like really fun to try things like carrot dogs, right? So like guy in the chat was saying like carrot dogs, ooh, but then we had another guy in the chat. He's like, I was skeptical too until I tried them and they're delicious. What's up, Video 1000 Nights? But I think back to when I was still overweight, right? And I must have been like 3.5 bills at this point. And a buddy of mine, a colleague at the time, takes me to this 24-hour cheesesteak diner. And the line in the middle of the night for this place was around the block. And he's like, dude, look at this. These are all of our people, right? And he's like, people would not be here if the food did not taste good. And even though I'm eating a completely different diet these days, that mentality still stays with me. I am not, no matter how healthy it is, going to eat anything if it doesn't taste good. So if this former 420-pound guy is telling you that a carrot dog tastes good, you can take it to the bank, Dr. B, that carrot dog tastes good. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm not doubting you, man. I was never pushing back or doubting you. I wholeheartedly agree. But no, I think that your point is the right point, which is that people need to understand we're not asking you to compromise your taste or your flavor. That's not the issue. We're saying to you, you can have your taste and flavor without compromising your health. This is an option, and you can take it if you want it.
No question about it. Spicy food is an option for all of us as well. Some people love it, some people, not so much, but the option is always there. Aaliyah, though, we talked a little bit about this earlier when we were talking about red pepper flakes, but she's wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more on the connection between spicy food and gut health.
Yeah, it's the capsaicin. Capsaicin is a part of spicy peppers, and they've actually found that capsaicin has beneficial effects in terms of not only our gut health, but there appear to be metabolic benefits to the consumption of capsaicin. By the way, capsaicin you can also find in your drugstore as a cream, and it's actually applied, like for example, to the joints of people that have arthritis. And so it's a quite fascinating thing. Like, think about this. What I'm telling you, I'm not advocating for drugs. What I'm telling you is that the pharmaceutical industry is looking at what happens in the plant world, and they're basically like pulling out the stuff that works and then turning it into something that they can commercialize. And so, but it naturally exists and occurs in real food. And this capsaicin again is beneficial for the gut microbiome and your metabolism.
All right, you think spicy food, you think heartburn. A lot of people reach for those Tums, but Serenity is wondering whether fasting could be a good remedy for heartburn.
For some people, I have not seen a great study to prove. Here's what I would say. If we create a fasting protocol, Chuck, it's almost a requirement that it pushes forward your dinner time, right? Because, like, if you're eating at midnight and then you're fasting, that's just to me kind of a bizarre fasting program. Like, any real fasting program basically means you have your dinner and then no food, no alcohol, no sweet treats in the evening. And if you do actually just that, you can actually improve heartburn or acid reflux. Because one of the problems is you lay down flat at night and you sleep, and whether you feel it or not, because you may actually feel it the next day during the day, but whether you feel it or not, laying flat, gravity used to be your friend, and now it's kind of turned into the enemy a little bit because you're laying flat. It's very easy for things to reflux up into the esophagus and then to stay there overnight. And this is why we want an empty stomach when we go to bed. So ideally 4 hours of blink time with no alcohol, no sweets, no food prior to going to bed.
Let's see here. Tommy, how can low carb diets affect the microbiome? I'm sure you can talk quite a bit about this one.
Well, I can talk about this one, but unfortunately, the reality is it's more speculative than actual hard science, at least where we stand today, believe it or not, Chuck, because we don't have as much research on this topic as we'd like. I mean, the reality is that people have run with the low carb idea. They've taken the baton and they've started running with it. And it's like, hold on, where are your studies? Like, where is the evidence to back this up? And so the reality with low carb, first of all, can we create a low carb diet that, like, I would sit there and say, yeah, that looks pretty healthy? It's possible. I still would take issue with the fact that you have to eliminate fruit in order to do a low carb diet. And that to me is elimination of a healthful food category. And that's not good for your gut microbiome. So it's hard for me to really stand behind a low carb diet, particularly when it's being used long term. It feels like more of a gimmick. It feels like more of a fad. And the other problem is that this scenario, this hypothetical scenario that I just painted the picture of, this is like with the involvement of a trained professional, like a registered dietitian. That's not the way that people are doing this, Chuck. This is not the way that people are doing this. The way that people are doing a low carb diet in the United States is they're eating crap. They're eating a ton more meat and they're eating low carb, ultra processed foods that they find at the supermarket. That to me is like invariably an unhealthy diet for the gut microbiome. There's just no question about that.
Man, yep. We could go down that road forever and a day, but we got about 5 minutes left. You feel like taking some questions kind of rapid fire?
Rapid fire.
All right, let's do it. Charles, wondering which spices improve nutrient absorption?
Well, I mentioned earlier that the black pepper can increase the absorption of the turmeric. So that's a quick example. That's the first that comes to mind.
Okay, let's see. World Mind at 1240. What top 3 plant foods can I eat to reduce bloating?
Ginger, sprouts. Sprouting reduces the bloating. And let me think. Honestly, I think I would go back to what we mentioned earlier. I would go back to the peppermint and the fennel because those things are so, again, like stick to what the science says, and that's where the science is.
That's it, man. Put a little pinch of that fennel between the old cheek and gum. It'll do you good. Jermaine, 1242. What about garlic? Is that good to eat every single day?
If you could, absolutely. There's no question. Garlic is so good for us.
Yeah, man. Do you put that in your coffee as well?
No, that would be
ever expand it?
that would be a little bit weird. But what you can do with garlic is you can get a clove of garlic. By the way, I don't recommend this if you have heartburn or acid reflux, but you can get a clove of garlic and you can chop it up into little small pieces. I call them pills because you're going to swallow them. And
Just
you
swallow
follow,
them whole?
yeah. So you do my chop then stop technique. So chop then stop, that basically means that you chop the garlic and you walk away for 10 minutes and then you come back to do whatever you're going to do with the garlic. And in this particular case, you could actually swallow the garlic. You just rinse it down with some water. And like you could take a garlic supplement, right? Or you can chop then stop on a garlic clove and actually just swallow garlic and take that as your supplement. And that's one of the ways you can do it, believe it or not. And my family, I don't personally do this every single day, but like when I start to get the little tickle in the throat and you know that something's starting, I do this.
Wow. So that's like your emergency that you could buy in the store. You just
I
reach
don't
for
do
that clove of
emergency.
garlic.
Yeah, I just do garlic. I don't do emergency. I do the garlic.
That's awesome. Okay, I'm gonna give that one a try. Don't worry, be happy. 1242. I drink chamomile tea every day. Is this good for gut health? We were talking about all kinds of tea. Is chamomile on that list?
Rapid fire. Yes. It is.
Okay, fair
Funny.
enough. Follow up. We were talking more about tea. Wondering, is there ever a scenario in which drinking a warm beverage could make bloating worse?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a
It depends.
showstopper right there.
So, well, it depends on what's in it's a curveball. It depends on what's in the tea or in the beverage. There are things that you could put into the beverage, but the fact that it's warm, from my perspective, I don't see that as making it's not the temperature that's the issue. It's potentially what's in the beverage.
Is it better to put the spices on or on during cooking or after the cooking process or before? Does it matter? Does timing matter when it comes to spice?
It's a great question. I am sure there's a study that answers this. Here's what I will say that I know. When you cook, it does change food, not necessarily for the worse. Think about tomatoes. Think about how delicious a roasted tomato is relative to what it started as when it was raw. And the lycopene content in the tomato is increased. So, from my perspective, I don't necessarily see it as bad to cook with them. I don't know which is more advantageous, and it probably is on a spice by spice basis.
All right. Switching real quick away from spice over to fat. Rachel says that she's reading Fiber Fueled right now. She's loving it. How many grams of fat should she be eating every day on a whole food, plant-based diet? What would you recommend so that she can continue to lose weight and have that optimal gut health?
I don't count grams of fat. I don't keep track of macros. That's never been my personal style. It's impossible for me to go and advocate for that because that's not something that I've ever done. I don't even count grams of fiber, even though I've written 2 books about fiber. I count plants. I focus on plants. I eat varieties of plants. I would recommend actually the same. And if you're trying to lose weight, the key with the fat is, from my perspective, don't consume oil, because oil is when you're actually extracting and removing the fiber, and you're just eating it with such caloric density. That to me is problematic for a person who's trying to lose weight. But on the flip side, in moderation, I don't have a problem with nuts and with avocados, because they still contain the fiber. And if you eat them in moderation, like without being, sort of ridiculous about them, then your satiety hormones, your mechanisms will kick in and you will stop eating. And that's the key.
All right, 2 more. Let's go back to garlic. Stephen Page at 1249. What about black garlic versus regular white garlic? Is there a difference between the two in terms of benefits for your gut?
I saw this question from Stephen Page, and when you said Stephen Page, I almost stopped you because you didn't even have to ask the question. I knew where it was going. Black garlic is fermented garlic. Black garlic, to me, actually, if you give me a choice between the two, I'll take the black garlic. They're both great. They're both great.
What's the flavor profile like on that? I don't think I have ever had black garlic.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe Steven can pop into the chat and give us a breakdown on the flavor profile, because I don't consume it with great regularity myself, to be honest with you. But I think they're both great.
All right. And the final question is, you talk about eating as many plants as you can. Have you kept count? What is your personal record for most variety of plants within a single week?
Oh, it's got to be like in the 60s. It's got to be in the 60s. Maybe more. So
that's up there, man.
Yeah. I had a head-to-head competition just for fun a few years ago against Marcia from the Plant Chicks. And we both kind of got ridiculous in terms of just trying to eat as many plants as possible. And so I'm pretty sure that week it was probably in the 90s.
Oh my God. I would love to know what your grocery bill was that week. That is insanity, but fun insanity, as we were talking about with this diet.
Yeah.
Dr. B, you're going to be back in a couple more weeks, which means that if you submitted a question, we didn't get to it today on the show, have no fear. We will save it and do our best to get you an answer on that upcoming episode. So keep on dropping those in the comments or in the chat. And if you have not yet picked up your copy of the Fiber Fueled Cookbook, go ahead and do that as well. There's a link to that right now in the show description and in the episode notes. And I know you're always such a busy guy, man. What else do you have going on? Any programs coming up that people should be aware of?
Yeah, actually, it's great timing. I'm starting the Plant Fed Gut Masterclass, which is my Cadillac program. It's a 7-week gut health program. It's about a complete educational foundation. So this is not like a quick fix thing. This is like you're ready to take 7 weeks and fully immerse yourself. Video lessons, audio lessons, live Q&As every single week to cover the material with me, live Q&As with other people, guest lecturers, active Facebook group. When I started the program in September of 2020, Chuck, I believe we had like 8 recipes. We're now up to 27 recipes. It's almost like getting an additional cookbook. We have an entire book that is over 100 pages long that's a part of the program. So the point is, like, I go out of my way to ensure that every person who does this program, they feel that they got tremendous value, like the value of the course being 4, 5, 6 times more than what you pay. And this is the reason why what I've consistently achieved is more than 95% of people who take my course, they would recommend it to their friends. And that's something that I'm very proud of. That's the hard work and play.
Absolutely, man. You know that somebody's getting something out of it if they're willing to put their name on the line for it, and back it up and say that's a quality product. And there's no doubt that that is indeed what it is you are delivering. So go ahead, sign up for that course today. And Dr. B, thank you so much for being here on short notice, man. To be perfectly honest with everybody, greatly do appreciate it. Can't wait to talk to you again in a couple of weeks.
Can't wait to talk to you again. Maybe we'll talk about sausages some more, Chuck. Thank you.
Maybe we'll come up with some more carrot dog recipes or sausage alternatives that are whole food plant based. That's the whole thing with this. It's about having fun and getting healthy at the same time. And you put those two things together, you're really living a pretty rich life in so many ways imaginable. And before we wrap up today, I would like to send best wishes to the family of Skip Trimble, who was a longtime Physicians Committee supporter and also just a powerhouse for animal protection who lived in Texas. And Skip unfortunately passed away recently, and his memorial service is today in Dallas. So I wanted to take a moment on behalf of everyone here at the Physicians Committee and send all of our best to Skip's wife, Mary, and their entire family. And thank you so much, Skip, for everything that you did with your time here on Earth. And for everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for tuning in today, raising your health IQs with us as we learned a whole heck of a lot about spice. This show was incredibly just too much fun. Thank you again, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz and the crew behind the scenes that makes that magic happen. Appreciate you as always. And until next time, keep it plant-based.